The King's Hotel was the most luxurious hotel in Santa Ana. It was only second to the Eastern Sea Group's five-star hotel that was under construction. It was also an ideal place for gatherings of the upper class. Booking private room 501 costs over $10,000. It was already evening. Several people dressed in suits and blazers greeted each other and headed for room 501. Brendan, it's only been a few days since we last met. You're in high spirits again. Hey, Joyce, I heard you were interested in Brendan. In your dreams? Who told you that? No need to be ashamed. You two are a perfect fit, like a sword to its sheath. You're the sword, of course. Sam, why do you have such a nasty mouth? Brendan, Joyce, and Sam bickered with each other as they took their seats. Joyce looked around. Where's Max? Why isn't he here yet? Sam started teasing her again. Several handsome guys are sitting right in front of you. You didn't even look at us for more than a minute before asking for Max. Screw you. Max and Mary are probably fooling around in bed right about now. Brendan laughed. Max is just using her. She's pretty, but he only sees her as a tool. Yep, when he gets his hands on this technology, he'll toss her aside, Sam said. While they were engrossed in their conversation, the door opened, and Max entered the room. Hey, you're finally here. Since you're late, you'll have to drink 3 glasses in one go. Brendan slid a glass and a bottle of wine toward him. No problem. Max filled his glass and downed the wine. He repeated this 3 times. Everyone applauded. Why is it just you? Joyce asked. Where's Mary? Max looked disgusted. Do you really think she's qualified to join our gathering? After I slept with her, I sent her back. Sam gave him a thumbs up. Max flashed a cryptic smile. I invited someone else today. I bet none of you can guess who he is. His words piqued everyone's interest. Who is it? Joyce asked expectantly. Don't keep us guessing. Tell us already, Brendan urged. Max leaned forward. Don't be too surprised, but I invited Stephen Adams. Joyce, Brendan, and Sam exchanged a glance. That was unexpected. Didn't Stephen disappear 6 years ago? No one knows what happened to him, Joyce said. He's not dead, if that's what you were all thinking. They say he messed with the wrong person and he went bankrupt. Then he ran away to Los Angeles and married into the Cassidy family. He's nothing but a freeloader. I heard something similar, Brendan said. Sam took a sip of wine with a satisfied look on his face. Oh, Stephen. Back then, he made me attend some kind of workshop, and I was forced to do the most tedious work for only $3,000 a month. I was worse than you, Max said. I was almost promoted to a management position, but Stephen said my resume was lacking. He wanted me to learn under someone for a year. Fortunately, when the Klein Group merged with our old company, they promoted me and gave me a raise. Sam and Max's grievances made Joyce and Brendan recall their own frustrations with Stephen. Hey, do you know where Dennis is from? Joyce asked. It's like he acquired the Klein Group overnight. There was no prior notice or anything. He can't be an ordinary person. Maybe he's from the East Coast or one of those wealthy families in Washington, D.C. Either way, I don't think we have to worry. Even though our boss has changed, with our capabilities, we'll be able to get on Dennis's good side in no time. I've also asked Mary to speed things up and get Noah to tell her where the technology is as soon as possible. Once I give that to Dennis, he'll definitely think of me as his trusted aide. When my position is solidified, you will all continue to live a good life with me. Everyone was relieved upon hearing this. Max, you've really thought this through, Brendan praised. Everyone nodded in agreement. After one round of drinks, Sam asked, When's Stephen coming? I can't wait to see how he's doing now that he's fallen to the bottom, Brendan said. Is he too scared to come? Joyce wondered out loud. Max reached for his phone. I'll ask around for his number. Before he could do anything, the door opened and Stephen walked in. Compared to 6 years ago, when he dressed in suits tailored by top-class designers, he was now wearing a casual shirt, sky blue jeans, and sneakers that looked like they were sold on the street. His outfit was worth at most $500. Stephen's appearance was enough for them to understand his current living situation. Max stood up. "Is this really the same Mr. Adams we all knew back then? Welcome," he said sarcastically. Brendan sized him up. "It really is you, Mr. Adams. Since you're late, you have to drink 3 times. He took out 3 bottles of wine and put them on the table. Stephen could tell that it was the strong stuff. When Brendan was met with no response, he gestured to the bottles. "This is something like a tradition whenever we gather. Whoever's late has to drink 3 times before we continue. You've decided to join us today, so you're following our rules, right?" Max, Joyce, and Sam were eager to see how Stephen would embarrass himself. They hated him to the bone. If it weren't for him, they would have risen to even higher positions by now. "Sure, I'll drink. It's only 3 bottles," Stephen said. A young woman, who had been sitting on the side, came forward in concern. "Mr. Adams, let me pour a glass for you." Brendan stopped her and glared. "What are you doing? This tradition is meant to be entertaining. It's no fun if he drinks from a glass. He'll be drinking from the bottle." "But he won't be able to handle all that," the girl protested. "Annika, shut up," Joyce scolded. Annika had no choice but to return to her seat. Stephen looked at her thoughtfully before picking up one of the bottles. "Mr. Adams, you have quite a high alcohol tolerance." Max applauded Stephen as a sense of satisfaction filled him. Stephen used to be lofty and miles above him, but not anymore. The others followed suit. One of the bottles was emptied in no time. Stephen picked up the second bottle and swallowed. In less than a minute, the wine was gone. Stephen was calm and composed. His mind seemed clear, and there were no signs of him coming close to being drunk. Everyone was stunned. How high was his alcohol tolerance? Under their astonished gazes, Stephen proceeded to down the 3rd bottle in one breath. His face wasn't flushed in the slightest as he put the empty bottle on the table. Everyone looked at each other. Max had originally planned for Stephen to make a fool out of himself after drinking a bottle of strong wine, but what he and the others didn't know was that not even 100 bottles could make him drunk. As the Grand Palace Master, possessing this kind of skill wasn't worth mentioning. "I'm done. Can I sit down now?" Stephen asked. "Yes, of course." Even though Max's plan had failed, he still had other tricks up his sleeve. "Mr. Adams, I heard that for the past few years you've been working menial jobs in Los Angeles as the son of the Cassidy family." "Yes, I have." "Compared to being the CEO of your own company, I think that suits you better." Max raised his glass of wine. "I'd like to congratulate you for becoming a freeloader. Let me toast you." Before Stephen could say anything, Max tilted the glass above him. Wine spilled down Stephen's face and onto his clothes. Max motioned for the others to join him. "All of you, come and give Mr. Adams a toast." Brendan, Joyce, and Sam didn't hesitate to flip their wine glasses above Stephen, leaving him completely drenched. Max laughed. "You never thought this day would come, did you? If you didn't make me go through that training back then, I would have snagged a position much higher than the director of the technology department. Fortunately, you disappeared out of the blue one day, and your company merged with the Klein Group. Thanks to that, we 4 were spared years of suffering." The other 3 agreed. Stephen had been wondering about the reason behind their actions, and he finally understood that they were blaming him for the training he'd set up for them 6 years ago. That training wouldn't have lasted several years as they thought. It would have only lasted at most a few months, which was enough time for them to gain the necessary experience for promotion. But it seemed like none of them had learned anything from it. They were even thinking that he'd looked down on them and purposefully put them through tedious and useless training on purpose. Stephen had misjudged them. If they had taken their training seriously, perhaps they would have reached an even higher position by now. The potential he saw in them 6 years ago had vanished. The current them wasn't worth nurturing.
"Today is truly a great day," Max said smugly. "Does anyone else want to remember this moment forever?"
"Yes," the others answered in unison.
"All right." Max pointed at Annika. "You, record this. I want to post it online so that everyone can see how one of the past top 10 young entrepreneurs in Santa Ana is doing now."
Annika shook her head.
"I can't do that."
Joyce sighed. "Why are you so ignorant? My cousin recommended you, so that's why I brought you to tonight's gathering. If you don't please the higher-ups, you won't be able to come to work tomorrow."
"Joyce,
Never mind, I'll record it myself. Move aside." Joyce pushed Annika away and took out her phone. Annika stood to the side. She didn't know what to do as she watched these so-called higher-ups make fun of Stephen.
"Can I come to work tomorrow?" she asked quietly.
"What do you think?" Joyce snapped. Stephen stayed seated during the entire process. He could have retaliated at any time, but he didn't, because he wanted to find out how much these people hated him and how far they were willing to go. These four used to be the future of his company, and they were expected to be the future of the Klein Group, but neither of them deserved their positions. The meeting with the upper management would be held 3 days later. It wasn't suitable for people like Max, Brendan, Joyce, and Sam to stay at the company. After the four of them achieved their goal of getting back at Stephen and humiliating him, they drank until they were drunk. At the end of the gathering, when Stephen left the hotel, he saw Annika crying by the side of the road. He held out a handkerchief. Annika accepted it and wiped her tears.
"Thank you. Today is the end of my 1-month probation period at the Klein Group. I would have become a full-time employee tomorrow if tonight didn't happen."
It was a well-known fact that the Klein Group controlled Santa Ana's economy. Every white-collar worker in the city dreamed of achieving a position in the Klein Group. And the higher the position, the higher the salary.
"Do you regret it?"
Stephen asked.
"No, what they were doing was wrong." "Okay, come to work, as usual, tomorrow, Annika."
Even though Stephen was disappointed in Max, Brendan, Joyce, and Sam, Annika's courage to go against her higher-ups had caught his attention. She was more of an asset to the company than the four of them.
"I've already been fired," Annika said helplessly. "Who told you that? Trust me, just pretend like tonight didn't happen. There will be a surprise when you come to work tomorrow."
Annika didn't know why, but the confidence behind Stephen's words made her want to trust him, even though tonight was their first meeting.
"Okay, I'll be there."
When Stephen returned to Riverview Villa, Natalie was dusting the counters. She turned and waved the feather duster in his face.
"You good for nothing. You're always causing trouble for us, especially Kim."
"Mom, calm down," Kim called out from where she was sitting on the couch. Stephen stepped to the side, avoiding a mouthful of feathers as he spoke.
"What happened, Mom?" "You're asking me when you're the one messing around outside? See for yourself."
Natalie picked up Kim's phone and showed him the video on the screen. It was a video of him being humiliated by Max and the others. Stephen realized they'd sent the video to Kim.
"Kim is the vice president of Haynes Industries and the Cassidy Group. Her reputation is important. But you, on the other hand, barely had an image to maintain in the first place. You idle around all day long. There's nothing you have to do, but you still manage to ruin your non-existent reputation. If word gets out, Kim's position will be at stake." "Don't worry, Mom. They won't be able to do this for much longer," Stephen said. On the way back, he'd informed Dennis that the upper management's meeting, which was scheduled to take place 3 days later, would be held tomorrow at a last minute's notice. Max and the others would receive their punishment tomorrow. Natalie put her hands on her hips. "I'm telling you now, if you don't take care of this, you and Kim have to get a divorce." "All right, but everything will be settled tomorrow," Stephen promised.
"Stephen, are you okay? I know it's been hard on you these days, Kim said. Even though everyone thought that he had nothing to do all day, she had a feeling that he had his own affairs to deal with. She didn't know what it was, but she believed that he would tell her when the time was right. Rather than being concerned about her own reputation, she was more worried about Stephen after watching that video. Stephen gave her a smile. I'm fine. Your words are comforting enough for me. The next day, the Klein Group's building, which was located at the center of the city, was bustling with traffic. The parking lot was filled with luxury cars like BMW, Audi, Mercedes-Benz, Porsche, and Maserati. The Klein Group was the backbone of Santa Ana's economy, and it was no secret that the upper management received a generous salary. For them to all be driving luxury cars was nothing out of the ordinary. Today was the first meeting that Dennis would hold with the upper management staff after becoming the new CEO of the Klein Group. The upper management was eager to meet with their mysterious new boss. His impression of them would determine their future position in the company. Max, Brendan, Joyce, and Sam were one of the first to arrive. Shortly before 8 o'clock, all of the upper management staff were gathered in the conference room. Dennis was the only one missing. Everyone had started to gossip about their new boss all at once. I heard Dennis is from a wealthy family in the East Coast. That's how he was able to buy the Klein Group overnight. A boss like Dennis would value competent employees the most, like the director of the technology department, Max. He's a core member of the Klein Group, and I bet Dennis will hold him in high regard. You're too kind, Max said. Don't forget about Joyce, the director of the sales department. She achieved billions of transactions on her own. Dennis will be relying on her a lot. I was only able to take care of hundreds of millions of orders and win the trust of the customers because of how well our products are made, Joyce added. Brendan, the department head, ensures that all products are of high quality. Brendan chuckled. You flatter me. In my opinion, logistics is imperative to a company like ours. I believe Dennis will think highly of Sam, our company's logistics director. A round of compliments ensued. The four of them were filled with pride as they listened to the rest of the staff praise their achievements. The four of you serve an important role in the Klein Group. Dennis has probably taken notice of you guys already. That's why he was so impatient and pushed up the date of the meeting. He couldn't wait to meet with you all. While the upper management staff were engaged in a heated discussion, a Lincoln pulled up in front of the Klein Group's building. Dennis and Stephen had arrived. These clothes are so stuffy. I'm never getting used to this, Dennis complained as he got out of the car. You'll get used to it eventually, Stephen replied with a smile. They entered the building and saw Annika waiting for them. She was surprised to see Stephen with Dennis. Annika realized why Stephen had been so confident last night when he told her to come to work today. He was acquainted with their new boss. On closer inspection, Dennis was handsome, but Stephen wasn't too bad either. Annika found herself admiring their good looks as they walked over. Annika, come with me, Stephen said. We'll head up to the office to make preparations before attending the meeting. Dennis went ahead to the conference room on the top floor. The executives heard the sound of footsteps outside the room and fell silent. They were anticipating their meeting with their new boss. Dennis, who was dressed in a designer suit, opened the door and attracted everyone's attention. He walked to the front of the room and scanned the crowd. Nice to meet you all. I'm Dennis Lucero, and I'm the new CEO of the Klein Group. The conference room was filled with warm applause. Mr. Lucero, welcome to the Klein Group, Max said. With him taking the lead, everyone else followed. Dennis smiled and held up a hand. The applause died down. I did acquire the Klein Group, and I am the CEO, but I'm not the owner. I'm like everyone else in this room. I'm just an employee. The only difference is that I'm in a higher position. Like all of you, I also have my own boss. Everyone was shocked by this news. There were rumors that Dennis was wealthy, and for him to have his own boss to answer to meant that there was someone powerful behind the scenes. The owner of the Klein Group would like to personally meet with all of you. He's already here, and he's preparing for the meeting." Dennis glanced at his $10 million watch, which, along with his expensive designer suit, was from Stephen for today's meeting. "It's about time. He should be here any minute." As if on cue, the door opened, and everyone turned to look. They were anticipating the real face behind the Klein Group. But to everyone's surprise, it was Annika who came into the room. "Annika, what are you doing here?" Joyce chided. "Do you know what kind of place this is? It's not for probationary employees. Also, I told you not to come in today. Why are you here?" "What are you waiting for? Get lost," Max said. "You're delaying our meeting with Mr. Lucero. Can you take responsibility for wasting our precious time?" Stephen's voice sounded from the hallway. "Is there a need to be so rude and disrespectful to your colleague?" Max frowned when Stephen followed Annika into the room. "Stephen, you must be in the wrong place." 6 years ago, maybe this place was yours," Brendan said. "But now it belongs to Mr. Lucero." Joyce crossed her arms. "Exactly. Don't tell me you came here because you heard we were going to have a meeting and you wanted to ask Mr. Lucero for a position. You're not doing as well as you were back then, and everyone sympathizes with you. But this isn't a place you can just enter. If you waited downstairs and spoke with a little more respect, we might have considered asking Mr. Lucero to give you a position." "Thank you so much for your kindness," Stephen said sarcastically. He looked at Dennis. "Mr. Lucero, it seems like I'm not welcome." Dennis chuckled as he walked off the stage. "Who wouldn't welcome you? Everyone, I'd like to formally introduce the owner of the Klein Group, Mr. Stephen Adams." "What?" Everyone was astonished, especially Max, Brendan, Joyce, and Sam. They looked at Stephen in horror. Never in their wildest dreams had they imagined that he was the owner of the Klein Group. To be able to acquire the Klein Group overnight without any advance notice was not an ordinary achievement. In other words, Stephen was no longer the same person he used to be. In fact, he was even more powerful than 6 years ago. Last night, the four of them humiliated Stephen and even recorded a video that they sent to his wife. Stephen was disappointed as he scanned their faces. "Why are you so scared? Max, Brendan, Joyce, and Sam, you four are the pillars of the Klein Group." Stephen's words weren't patronizing, but the four of them felt the immense weight behind them. They scurried out of their seats and lowered their heads in front of him. "Mr. Adams, we're very sorry. We were blind." "I don't think so. Your eyes were very clear and bright. How else could you have become the core of the company after the merger 6 years ago? It's human nature to avoid the river and find a shortcut to the top of the mountain. I should respect the decisions you made back then. But that doesn't change the fact that you've done some unscrupulous things. Was it gratifying to pour wine on me last night?" The executives who had tried their best to flatter the four of them before the meeting began turning their backs and drawing a clear line between them. They even reprimanded them. "Are you crazy? How dare you pour wine on Mr. Adams? This is unforgivable. In my opinion, they deserve to be punished." Stephen snapped his fingers. "Today, I'll return the favor." One of the kitchen staff pushed a cart into the room, but they weren't bringing in food. There was a large bucket of dirty cleaning water on the cart. Max, Brendan, Joyce, and Sam were already standing in a spot a good distance away from the rest of the executives. That made things easy for Stephen. He lifted the bucket with one hand and splashed them with the dirty water, drenching them from head to toe. From today onwards, Max, Brendan, Joyce, and Sam are released from all of their responsibilities at the Klein Group. Don't show your faces here ever again." The four of them didn't question Stephen. Their positions were as different as day and night, even more so than 6 years ago. They hurried out of the room and left the building. Neither of them dared to ask Stephen for their salary. Stephen made arrangements for the staff to clean up the conference room. The meeting was put on hold for 15 minutes.
When the meeting resumed, Stephen waved to Annika, who joined him on stage. "There's another announcement I would like to make. Annika will be the Director of Personnel and Finance of the Klein Group." This was the last thing that Annika was expecting. She thought Stephen would announce that she'd passed her probation period. Who would have thought that he would appoint her as the Director of Personnel and Finance? She was rising through the ranks way too fast. "Mr. Adams, I'm not qualified to hold such an important position." "I'm sure you can do it. If you need any help, Mr. Lucero will assign you an assistant. Work hard. Don't disappoint me." Stephen had so much confidence in her abilities that Annika could only agree. After a round of applause, Stephen made his third announcement. "The Klein Group will be renamed to the Wyvern Group. In half a month, there will be an event to publicly announce our company's changes to the public. Mr. Lucero will take care of all the business dealings. I won't be stepping in unless it's necessary. Please give him your full support." Stephen was the owner of the Klein Group, and he was the one behind the overnight acquisition of the company. Changing the name was normal since he was the new owner, but giving Dennis full authority was equivalent to giving him the entire company. Could it be that Stephen didn't think too much of Santa Ana's economic lifeline? How powerful was he really? After making his announcements, Stephen left the conference room. Even though Dennis didn't know how to manage a company, Stephen had written down a plan for him beforehand. If he followed the plan, the meeting would conclude without a hitch. 2 hours later, the meeting was finally over. Because of Dennis's warning, no one in the company knew about Stephen's identity except for the top executives. They were only aware that a mysterious person was supporting Dennis from behind the scenes. The first thing Dennis did when he returned to the CEO's office was stretch. "My back hurts," he muttered. "Fighting on the battlefield is easier than giving a speech while sitting in the same spot for 2 hours. Stephen chuckled as he looked up from his phone. "Most people would kill to be in your position." "Couldn't be me, Mr. Adams. Why didn't you change Klein Group to its original name?" "You mean Felicity Corporation? If I did that, my identity would have been exposed. Besides, you're the CEO, and as far as the public is concerned, this is your company now. Don't you think Wyvern Group suits you more than Felicity Corporation?" Dennis shrugged as he took a seat on the opposite couch. "I don't have an eye for these things." Stephen laughed. "How did the investigation on Richard go?" "I did some digging and found Richard's mother. She runs a tofu stall for a living. As for Richard, the official statement provided to the public about his death was that he committed suicide out of guilt for embezzling public funds." Dennis replied. "He was likely framed," Stephen said. "Yes, there's a high possibility. At that time, there was an information broker who specialized in the trade of confidential information. He expended a lot of effort to record the masterminds who plotted against Richard. He originally wanted to sell this info, but the Klein Group rose in power, and everyone was too afraid to go against them. In the end, the case is ruled a suicide and buried." "Does this recording still exist?" "For someone in his field, there's a high chance that he still has it. While the information he obtained isn't useful in the present, it could come in handy 10 years or maybe even 20 years later. If we get our hands on this recording, we'll know what really happened to Richard back then." "All right, there's no time to lose. Let's go meet with this information broker." On the surface, the information broker, Peyton, was a club owner, but his real business was the buying and selling of confidential information. Since Stephen and Dennis didn't have an appointment, Peyton didn't know what kind of information they wanted, but he wouldn't turn anyone away as long as they could afford it. "You two don't look familiar. You're not from Santa Ana, are you?" "And if we aren't?" Stephen asked. "Don't tell me you only do business with the locals." "Not really. I welcome anyone who requires my services. As long as you have the money, I won't refuse you," Peyton replied. "We're the ones who came looking for you, so naturally, we won't let you down." "Great. I like doing business with straightforward people. So tell me, what kind of information are you looking for? If it involves something that has happened in Santa Ana, no matter how secretive it is, I'll have it in stock," Peyton asked. Stephen leaned forward on the counter. "Then you should know about the Felicity Corporation's bankruptcy 6 years ago, right?" Peyton was surprised to hear Stephen talking about Felicity Corporation. This was the name of Klein Group's predecessor before they merged, and it had only been 2 days since Dennis Lucero took over the Klein Group. Peyton knew everything that was going on in the city, but not this time. He hadn't figured out why Lucas Klein had stepped down so suddenly and handed over his position as CEO to Dennis Lucero. "Are you Mr. Lucero?" Peyton asked suspiciously. "Who I am is none of your business. I'm only here for the information I need," Stephen said. "Then what do you want to know?" 6 years ago, when Felicity Corporation went bankrupt, Richard, the acting CEO and the director of the technology department, committed suicide by jumping off the building shortly afterward. But I know that this isn't the whole truth. A few members of Felicity Corporation colluded and plotted against Richard, forcing him into a corner and leaving him with no choice but to end his life. Peyton listened intently. This was something that he did know, and he had a record of this conspiracy. It was useless back then because the Klein Group was too powerful. Everyone was afraid of inciting Lucas's wrath, so no one dared to buy the recording. "Why are you here if you already know everything?" "Because I don't have evidence. When you caught wind of the conspiracy 6 years ago, you sent someone to eavesdrop and record their schemes. This recording will bring the truth to light," Stephen asked. "So, you're here for this recording? Well, you're right, I do have it. To think that after 6 long years, it's finally going to be of use. But you see, every piece of information has a price," Peyton replied. "I know your rules. Name your price," Stephen said. Peyton smirked as he held up a hand. Stephen thought for a moment. $5,000? That's a little too much, but the recording is useful to me, so I guess it is a reasonable price. He turned to Dennis. "Do you happen to have $5,000 in cash?" Peyton tapped the counter to get their attention. "Wait, I think you've misunderstood me. $5,000 isn't enough to do business with me. If this gets out, my customers will take advantage of our future transactions. The minimum I charge is $50,000. $50,000, huh? That's an acceptable price, too. Even if Peyton charged $500,000, it would still be worth nothing to Stephen. Seeing that Stephen was still not enlightened, Peyton decided to be upfront. "I'm talking about $500 million. $500 million? Dennis repeated in annoyance. "Are you taking us for fools?" "That's my price. Take it or leave it. If you can't afford it, then I'm sorry." Peyton pointed at the door. "The door is over there. Do you want to leave?" Stephen wasn't angry. Instead, he was still smiling. "We're talking business here. If you're charging $500 million, you should at least tell me why it's so expensive." "Sure, it's no secret. This recording concerns the Klein Group. Even though Lucas Klein is no longer in the company, he was in control of the city's economy for 6 years. During this time, no one dared to cross him. Giving you this recording will put me at risk, so my offer of $500 million is reasonable. Think of it as my insurance." "You're not wrong," Stephen said. "To me, this recording is worth far more than $500 million, and that amount is just pocket money. It's too bad I don't want to give it to you, though. You see, if I spend $500 million for a recording and this gets out, my reputation will go down the drain. So how about this? I'll give you 50 cents at most." Peyton narrowed his eyes. "Twisting my words and throwing them back in my face. You're messing with the wrong person. I'll give you 2 choices. 1, take out $500 million for the recording, and I'll pretend I didn't hear what you said just now. 2, kneel before me and apologize. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving unscathed today." Stephen took his arms off the counter. A cold smile played on his lips. "You may know everything in this city, but you're too arrogant for your own good." "I assume you're choosing neither? Okay then, I did give you a choice. You're the one who didn't take it." Peyton clapped his hands. At his signal, his men rushed into the club and surrounded Stephen and Dennis. Peyton's lackeys were barehanded, but from the looks in their eyes, Stephen and Dennis knew that they'd killed before. "I'm sure you've been curious. I run a club to disguise my real business, and with all the information I've sold over the years, how am I still living a comfortable life?" Peyton jerked a thumb towards his bodyguards.
It's because of them. They're skilled mercenaries from around the world. Each one can hold their own against a fight with 10 people. Even Trent and Sergio wouldn't last against them. Stephen knew that Peyton wasn't lying. These mercenaries had fought and lived through the flames of war. Their killing intent couldn't be concealed. Scared yet? The smart thing to do would be to kneel. Perhaps I can consider sparing your lives. Stephen grinned. Me? Scared of a group like that? I don't think you know the true meaning of fear. He motioned for Dennis to come closer and whispered, It's been a while since you last had a good workout, right? Now that you mention it, it has indeed been a while. Dennis cracked his knuckles and waved to the bodyguards, gesturing for them to come to him. Dennis's provocative actions angered both Peyton and his bodyguards. All of you, get him! At Peyton's command, the mercenaries rushed at Dennis. To Peyton's surprise, none of them could even get close. Dennis sent them flying across the room with his bare fists. In less than 30 seconds, every single mercenary who'd once dominated battlefields abroad lay on the ground, clutching their stomachs in pain. Peyton reached below the counter and pulled out a gun from a drawer. Before Peyton could aim the gun at Dennis, he shot forward like lightning and appeared in front of him. Dennis snatched the pistol from his hand and dismantled it. Then, he dropped the parts back on the table. The entire process only took 20 seconds. Dennis smiled at him as if he hadn't broken a sweat. Are you done? Peyton was frozen in place. Dennis's strength had exceeded his expectations. Even if 100 mercenaries were here, none of them would stand a chance. Peyton raised his hands in surrender. One of the mercenaries on the floor, who had been active on the battlefield for a long time, recognized Dennis. I know him. He's one of the 4 great generals, Dennis Lucero. The 4 great generals were invincible on battlefields across the world. They were a nightmare for mercenaries. Ever since the 4 great generals followed Stephen 6 years ago, their prestige flourished as they swept across the land, defeating any foes who threatened to disturb the peace of their country. The mercenary sat up and got on his knees. He apologized to Dennis and asked him to spare his life. When the rest of the mercenaries saw their leader submitting to Dennis, they did the same and apologized. It wasn't just the mercenaries who were afraid. Peyton was also racked with fear. He had heard of the world-renowned 4 great generals. Never in his life would he have imagined one of them to be standing here today. If Dennis was enough to scare his bodyguards into submission, then how strong would the man standing next to him be? He seemed to have a higher status than Dennis. Could he be? A terrifying title popped into Peyton's mind. He stepped out from behind the counter and fell to his knees. Sir, please have mercy. Stephen looked on impassively. Bring me that recording. I'll get it right now. Peyton hurried to the back room and fumbled through the boxes to dig out a dusty cassette tape that he had stored for 6 years. He ran back out and held it to Stephen with trembling hands. Stephen took it and turned to Dennis. Give him the money. Peyton quickly waved his hands. No, it's okay. I'll give it to you for free. Is this how you run your business? You open your doors, but you don't want compensation. How will you support yourself? We're doing business here, so I'll give you what you deserve. I told you 50 cents before, so that's what you'll receive. Dennis had already reached into his pocket. He took out 5 dimes and dropped them into Peyton's hands. Peyton didn't dare refuse. It was only when Stephen and Dennis left the club that he leaned heavily against the counter, feeling like their encounter had drained the life out of him. Stephen and Dennis returned to the company and inserted the tape into the VCR at the CEO's office. Voices sounded from the TV speakers. That stubborn idiot, Richard. He won't budge no matter what we say. We have to think of a good way to deal with him. Caroline, you're his girlfriend, and he trusts you. Got any good ideas? I know him well. Even if his life is at risk, he'll never sell out Stephen. He's so loyal to him that no amount of money can convince him. What should we do then? Richard may be loyal, but he does have his weaknesses. I have an idea. He cares deeply about his mother, so I'll use her to threaten him. He'll definitely give in. I didn't expect you to be so cunning, Caroline. All right, let's do this. As long as we get that technology, our future in the Klein Group will be secured. Stephen pressed the pause button and threw the remote on the table. Anger flashed in his eyes. I didn't think Richard's girlfriend, Caroline, and his closest friend, Frank, were behind his death. If it weren't for this recording, no one would ever know the truth. I won't let them get away with this. Dennis, find out where they are now. From the recording, Caroline and Frank had devised this scheme to solidify their positions at the Klein Group, but Stephen hadn't seen them during the meeting with the upper management staff. Dennis left the room to investigate Caroline and Frank. As one of the 4 great generals, it wasn't difficult for him to find them. Soon, he returned. Did you find anything? Stephen asked. Who would have thought? The world is really small. Mr. Adams, do you remember how after you acquired the Klein Group, there were a few people who rushed to come here and negotiate business with us? Of course, they were from Star Media. The news hadn't been released to the public yet, but they somehow found out through their connections and came to see us. Their boss probably isn't your typical CEO. A thought crossed Stephen's mind. Wait, are you implying that... Dennis chuckled. It's exactly what you're thinking. The current CEO of Star Media is Caroline, and Frank is the owner. No wonder. Everyone who followed me back then was charismatic and had a good business sense. While most would get a better grasp on the situation before making a decision, my people would have already taken the opportunity. I wonder how Caroline and Frank would react when they found out that I'm the owner of Wyvern Group. What's our next move? Dennis asked. I'll be visiting them, of course. 6 years ago, they forced Richard to jump off a building, and after his death, he was ridiculed by the public for a crime he didn't commit. They should take responsibility for what they've done. Understood, Dennis said. He made an appointment with Caroline, and the two of them headed out. Star Media was also located at the center of the city. It wasn't far from the Wyvern Group. As Stephen and Dennis entered the building and walked across the lobby, they noticed a conspicuous poster of Caroline pasted on the wall. It included a short biography of her life before she became a successful businesswoman. Besides the huge poster, there were also various awards that Caroline had received, displayed in the hall on the first floor. Stephen scoffed as he stared at the large poster on the wall. Caroline had only gotten to this position by using Richard as a tool. Dennis went to the front desk and spoke to the receptionist. Hello, I have an appointment with Miss Caroline. The receptionist made a call to confirm before standing up. Please follow me. She led Stephen and Dennis to Caroline's office on the 18th floor. The receptionist knocked on the door and announced their arrival. Caroline's voice came from inside the office. Let them in. Stephen and Dennis walked into the office and saw Caroline sorting through the documents on her desk. Without lifting her head, she told them to have a seat. Stephen leaned against the wall. Hey, Caroline. Now that you're the CEO, you're putting on airs. Caroline whirled around at the familiar voice. Stephen was standing beside the door with an unfamiliar man next to him. What are you doing here? Weren't you? Stephen smiled. No, I'm not dead, but I bet you and Frank hoped that I was. Am I right? A voice sounded from another room in the office. Caroline, is there a guest? A man came out, strapping on his belt and suppressing a yawn. It appeared that he had just woken up. Frank turned towards the door, and his eyes widened in shock. Stephen, is that you? Stephen looked at Frank and then back at Caroline. Seems like you two already live together. Frank's expression hardened as he spoke with a tone that he reserved for his clients. That's none of your business. Why are you here? Official and personal reasons, Stephen said. If it's official business when you suddenly disappeared without a trace 6 years ago, your Felicity Corporation merged with the Klein Group and was left with no leader. That had nothing to do with us. Without waiting for Stephen's reply, Frank continued. As for personal matters, Richard has been dead for 6 years, and longing for a dead man is useless. Caroline and I fell in love with each other. There's nothing wrong with living together. Stephen waved his hand dismissively. I already know that Felicity Corporation's sudden collapse had nothing to do with you two, but I'm here for something else.
The day after my company merged with the Klein Group, Richard committed suicide by jumping off the building.
Stephen, why are you bringing this up? The authorities already determined that he made that choice because his embezzlement of public funds was exposed. He felt guilty, and he didn't want to implicate his family.
That is what the reports say, but there's another version.
Frank tensed. Did Stephen know what he and Caroline did to Richard all those years ago? What nonsense are you talking about?
I'll let you two see for yourselves.
Stephen took out his phone and played the recording that he'd made a copy of earlier. The same conversation between Caroline and Frank sounded in the office. Even though this recording was created many years ago, and the tape had been left in a dusty storage room all this time, the sound quality was clear and audible. Frank and Caroline's stoic expressions faltered. It had been 6 long years since they'd plotted against Richard, but everything they had said was recorded as if it had just happened yesterday. Frank and Caroline never thought that their conspiracy would be recorded. If this was revealed to the public, they would have to give up their company, and the police might come looking for them again. This recording was evidence that they coerced Richard into committing suicide 6 years ago. Caroline looked at Frank in a panic. Compared to her, he was much calmer. Frank took a deep breath and contemplated his options. After thinking it over, he said, "Name your price." Confusion crossed Stephen's face.
What do you mean?
I have to admit, Stephen, 6 years ago, you were brilliant. You started from scratch, but you were able to establish your own business that would later become a leading enterprise in Santa Ana. But even though you've come back, you're no longer the same person you were back then. I know you married into the Cassidy family, and your status is next to nothing. Besides going out to shop for groceries, preparing meals, and serving your wife every day, your life simply isn't worth anything. But if you have money, you can leave the Cassidy family. You won't have to rely on them anymore. You can make a life for yourself, and we can give you that opportunity. Caroline instantly grasped what Frank was trying to do. He's right, Stephen. Tell us how much you need. We can give you as much as you want. Stephen was quiet as he registered their words. Frank and Caroline wanted to buy the recording from him and erase the evidence. He laughed bitterly.
Not only do you not feel the slightest bit of remorse after forcing Richard to his death, but you're also even trying to dispose of the last remaining evidence of your scheme. Do you two not have a conscience?
Frank stared at Stephen with an expression that was devoid of any emotion. Richard is dead. He's been dead for 6 years, but we are still alive. Is it really worth it for the living to suffer for the sake of someone who's already gone? I used to be his closest friend, and Caroline was the girl he loved. Despite what happened, he wouldn't want to see us suffer because of him. We indeed plotted against him, but after he died, I took care of Caroline for 6 whole years in his place. Stephen was rendered speechless by Frank's utter lack of shame. He and Caroline had forced Richard into a corner, which ultimately led to his death. Then they got together and seemingly forgot that Richard had ever existed in the first place. And now, Frank was implying that Richard should be grateful that he was taking care of the woman he loved for 6 years. It seemed like some people were destined to go to hell. On the way here, Stephen wondered if Frank and Caroline felt guilty for their past actions. 6 years ago, they were young and immature, and maybe they'd made a mistake that couldn't be undone. If they were riddled with guilt and willing to pay for their crimes, he would have given them a chance to start anew. But it seemed like that was unnecessary.
If you want to buy the recording, then forget it. I'm afraid you guys can't afford it, Stephen said.
If you don't name a price, how would you know if we can't afford it? Do you know how much the current market value of Star Media is? Frank held up a finger. $1 billion. It's one of the richest companies in Santa Ana. Even if you asked us for $10 million, we would be able to give it to you, Frank replied.
$10 million? For you two, I'm sure the value of this recording far exceeds $10 million, Stephen asked.
Then state an amount. As long as we have enough, we'll hand it over, Frank said.
Stephen chuckled. Okay, you already said it earlier, though. Star Media has a market value of $1 billion, so I'll ask for $1 billion. For you two, this is also an affordable price. What? Are you crazy? Frank exclaimed. You might as well just tell me directly that you want me to hand over Star Media. Well, if you want to give me your company, who am I to refuse? Frank clenched his fists, on the verge of losing his composure. He took a deep breath and managed to retain the calm in his voice. Stephen, I want to make a deal with you. Stephen nodded. I also sincerely want to work out a deal. Frank ran a hand through his hair and held in his frustration as best he could. $1 billion is really too much. Just because Star Media is worth $1 billion doesn't mean that I can afford to give you that much. If you ask for a lower amount, I'd gladly hand it over. Once Frank obtained the tape recording, he would get rid of Stephen. It wouldn't be the first time he'd killed someone. Stephen refused. I'm the kind of person who hates bargaining with others. I've named my price. I don't want more, and I don't want less. If you want this recording, give me $1 billion and not a single cent less. Frank and Caroline's patience was wearing thin. Stephen was refusing to budge, but there was nothing they could do. He had the recordings as leverage. Their lives were at stake. Stephen, $1 billion is a lot of money. Why don't you and your friend have a seat first? I'll have to discuss this with Caroline. Sure, Stephen said. He looked at his watch. But you'd better hurry up. I'm not that patient. Frank pulled Caroline into the back room. Moments later, Stephen heard them arguing. The walls were soundproof, but he heard their voices loud and clear. He couldn't help but be amused by their antics. Who would have thought that Frank would come up with such a ridiculous idea to get out of this? He was shameless to his core. In the end, Caroline gave in and reluctantly agreed to his plan. Around 5 minutes later, they came out. How did it go? Did you guys come to a decision? Stephen asked, pretending like he had no idea what they were planning. Yes, we have. $1 billion is too much, but I can afford $100 million. And, in addition, Frank paused and pushed Caroline in front of Stephen. Mr. Adams, what do you think of Caroline's looks? Is she pretty? Stephen naturally understood where Frank was going with this. Sure, she has a remarkable fashion sense, flawless makeup skills, and gentle amber eyes. Heads would turn if she walked down the street. Maybe 99.9% of men wouldn't be able to resist her charms. Caroline's beautiful appearance had captivated Richard 6 years ago. If it weren't for his loyalty to Stephen, if she had told him to die, he would have jumped off the building without hesitation. As for why Stephen had said that 99.9% of men might have fallen for Caroline, he had no idea if that was true. But what he did know for certain was that the 0.1% of men who wouldn't be attracted applied to him. In his eyes, Kim was the most beautiful woman he'd ever met. Frank smiled complacently. It looks like Mr. Adams thinks highly of you, Caroline. Mr. Adams, it's rare to come across a beautiful woman like her. I bet you were interested in her 6 years ago, but you didn't make a move on her because she was Richard's girlfriend. But now, the chance has come. Frank sounded like he was some kind of salesman, going door to door to advertise his wares. Caroline and I already agreed to this. You may take her as your lover and enjoy her as you wish. When your wife goes to work, you have nothing to do around the house except stare at your wife's mother all day. At least Caroline is better than that old lady, don't you think? Frank leaned closer to Stephen and whispered, You may not know this, but Caroline is very good in bed. She can make you feel like you've reached the pinnacle of your life in an instant. Stephen glanced at Caroline. Did you agree to this? Yes, Mr. Adams. But I'm just a freeloading husband. I don't have anything to my name, and I don't have the money to support you. Also, as Frank put it, there's an old lady running the house. If she catches you, you'll meet a miserable end, Stephen said. I'm okay with that. You'll be getting $100 million soon. Besides, Frank's a billionaire. After following him around for 6 years, I don't need any more money. Caroline sat on Stephen's lap, wrapped her arms around his neck, and pressed her chest against his face.
Dennis, who had been quiet all this time, spoke up in disgust. Just when I thought I'd seen it all. What the hell are you doing? You have no shame? Who gave you permission to interrupt? Frank asked with a glare. Who are you, anyway? I. Just as Dennis was about to introduce himself, Stephen pushed Caroline away and stopped him. I'm not an idiot, Frank. Are you aware that Caroline sleeps around to climb up the ranks? Do you see her as some kind of second-hand item that you can toss away whenever you want? Do you think someone like her is worth the remaining $900 million? Stop taking me for a fool. Caroline's face flushed with embarrassment. Stephen was right. Back when she was in a relationship with Richard, she'd hooked up with other men. After her partner changed to Frank, she hadn't stopped. She slept with many senior officials and even clients for the benefit of this business. She was the main reason why Star Media was now at the top. Dennis pretended like he just had an epiphany. I see. So that's how it is. I was wondering why he was willing to part with his girlfriend so easily. So he never saw her as a person to begin with. He's throwing her away like he's tossing out a pair of old jeans. The smile faded from Caroline's face. Frank hurriedly tried to reassure her. Caroline, please don't listen to his nonsense. I didn't mean it that way. This is the only choice we have. Caroline didn't reply, but it was obvious that there was now some distance between them. Mr. Adams, if you want something else, I can try and get it for you, Frank said. Stephen shook his head in disappointment. You used to be so smart. How are you getting confused at this stage in your life? You don't understand what I'm trying to say. Do I need to spell it out for you? What I want is 1 billion, not a woman. Dennis chimed in for good measure. Right. We only want 1 billion. Stop wasting our time. Frank dropped all pretenses. Stephen, don't cross the line. I and Caroline are trying to settle this peacefully for Richard's sake. If you insist on your ridiculous deal, then don't blame us for being rude. Have you heard of Dennis Lucero, the man who recently acquired the Klein Group overnight? Let me tell you something. Klein Group may be powerful, but it's worth nothing to Mr. Lucero. And we're one of his business partners. If you use this recording to threaten me, it's the same as threatening Mr. Lucero. If I ask him for help, the recording you have will become useless. Even if Richard comes back to life, the outcome won't change. Is Mr. Lucero backing you up? Stephen laughed and threw a glance over his shoulder at Dennis, his eyes twinkling with amusement. How come I didn't know about this? Dennis shrugged. I didn't know either. Frank gritted his teeth as he took out his phone. It's fine if you don't believe me. I've already got Mr. Lucero's number. I'll give him a call right now and make you two disappear from Santa Ana. Frank pressed the call button, and Dennis's phone started ringing. Frank shot Dennis a glare. Go out and take the call or hang up. I think it's better if I hang up, Dennis said with a chuckle. When he ended the call, Frank's call was naturally redirected to voicemail. Frank didn't think too much of it and proceeded to give Mr. Lucero another call. Dennis's phone rang again. This time, Frank noticed something amiss and hung up. Sure enough, Dennis's phone also stopped ringing. He gave Mr. Lucero another call, and once again, Dennis's phone rang. Frank went up to Dennis and asked him to show him his phone. Dennis held out his phone, and the number displayed on the screen belonged to him. Frank gave Dennis a wary look. Was he Mr. Lucero? How could that be possible? Frank held up his phone to Caroline. Are you sure this is Mr. Lucero's number? Yes, my colleague said they double-checked with Mr. Lucero's secretary to make sure they got the right number. There can't be a mistake. Frank paled and gestured to Dennis. He's Mr. Lucero. Caroline's eyes widened. Are you sure? Maybe they just happen to have the same number. Frank really wanted to ask her if she was an idiot for suggesting something so ridiculous, but this wasn't the time for that. He turned to Dennis. Are you really Mr. Lucero? Dennis waved his phone. You called me and personally confirmed my number. If I told you I'm not, Would you believe me? How much influence did Stephen really have on Mr. Lucero to be on his side? Frank couldn't even begin to imagine it. Frank, didn't you say that Mr. Lucero has your back? Stephen asked. Mr. Lucero is right here. If you have any requests, you don't need to call him. You can ask him face to face. Frank immediately straightened and assumed a more respectful tone. Mr. Lucero, is Stephen your... He's my boss. Dennis narrowed his eyes. And as I recall, you wanted me to stand up for you and make him disappear from Santa Ana just now. Frank's stomach did a flip when Dennis called Stephen his boss. No, of course not. I wouldn't dare. Since you wouldn't dare, then hand over the $1 billion, Stephen said. Frank was left with no choice but to agree to his demands. He couldn't win against Stephen if Dennis was on his side, and who knew how many supporters Stephen really had? Mr. Adams, $1 billion is really too much, Frank said. Even if we sold Star Media, we would still need some time to get the money ready. Please give us a few days. I promise we'll get you $1 billion. Stephen thought about it before replying. How about this? I'll give you 3 days. Bring the money and come find me. If I don't see $1 billion in 3 days, you should be prepared for the consequences. He stood up and headed for the door. Let's go, Dennis. When the door closed, Frank and Caroline collapsed on the couch. $1 billion, Caroline said. Where are we going to get $1 billion? Frank sighed. We don't have a choice. We'll have to sell Star Media and start over. Start over? Easy for you to say. You should already know how much effort I put in and how many sacrifices I've made to develop our company. But what can we do? Mr. Lucero was able to acquire the Klein Group in one night, and he's backing Stephen. Stephen is much more powerful than we think. After a brief silence, Caroline sat up abruptly. I have an idea. If we kill Stephen without anyone knowing, all our problems will be solved. Frank wasn't convinced. How are we supposed to do that? 3 days later, we'll tell Stephen that we managed to get $1 billion, but he has to meet us alone if he wants the money. If he refuses, we'll threaten him. We can tell him that if he won't meet with us alone, we'll kill ourselves and he'll never get the money. He'll have to listen to us. When he comes, we'll ambush him and get rid of him for good. Spending several million to hire an assassin is more worth it than losing $1 billion. Frank had some reservations about Caroline's plan, but for the most part, it wasn't a bad idea. Okay, but what about Mr. Lucero? If Stephen dies, what are we supposed to tell him? We have to make sure we kill Stephen instantly. If he escapes, we'll be done for. We can just deny it, Caroline said. There won't be any evidence. We can tell him that after Stephen took the money, we went our separate ways. Wherever he decided to go next has nothing to do with us. As for the assassins, we can ask Santa Ana's Commerce Guild for assistance. Frank frowned. I don't know if that's a wise move. Why not? One of the higher-ups has always been interested in me. If I slept with him, maybe we could even save several million. And with the Commerce Guild supporting us, there's no reason for us to be afraid of Mr. Lucero. Back then, the Klein Group rose to fame so quickly that there had to be someone behind them. It could have been the work of the Commerce Guild. Caroline paused and moved closer to Frank. For now, this is the only way. If we don't get rid of Stephen, we'll have to live the rest of our lives in fear of being exposed. Also, sleeping with that man from the Commerce Guild makes me a little uncomfortable. So why don't we... Frank met her lustful gaze. Before you go, I'll give you the time of your life. With that, he pounced on Caroline, who giggled and threw her arms around him. On the way back to the company, Stephen asked Jack to investigate the Klein Group. When Felicity Corporation went under 6 years ago, the Adams family did play a part behind the merger with the Klein Group, but their real target was the Commerce Guild. Stephen read Jack's message as he walked into the CEO's office. So the Klein Group was just a pawn. The Commerce Guild was the real mastermind behind what happened back then.
That would explain how Lucas managed to get a hold of Santa Ana's economy and control it so quickly. The Commerce Guild had assisted him. The Commerce Guild had 3 leaders, Benjamin, Carter, and Mason. Benjamin was the CEO, while Carter and Mason were the second in command. Ever since 6 years ago, they've been making Lucas appear in public in their stead while controlling the city's economy from behind the scenes. Ordinary people wouldn't have access to this information. Dennis closed the door behind them. "Mr. Adams, why don't we take action and get rid of the Commerce Guild now?" "There's no need to rush. Let's wait for the money from Caroline and Frank," Stephen said. Frank and Caroline wouldn't be able to get $1 billion ready in 3 days. As such, they would turn to someone else for help. There was a high possibility that these people would turn out to be key players from the incident 6 years ago. On the outskirts of Santa Ana, 3 men in their 50s were gathered on the pier. They were each relaxing on a beach chair and fishing leisurely. Behind them stood several experienced bodyguards. The bodyguards alone were a sign of their prestige. These 3 men were the leaders of Santa Ana's Commerce Guild: Benjamin, Carter, and Mason. Benjamin swept his gaze over the river. "The city's been lively lately. A mysterious tycoon named Dennis Lucero acquired the Klein Group overnight, and we 3 old folks knew nothing about it ahead of time." "I know," Mason said. "And it's like Lucas vanished into thin air. His phone's off, and there's no reply to any of my messages. I even sent someone to his hometown, but nobody could find him. He was an influential figure in Santa Ana, but he disappeared without a trace. Isn't that strange?" Carter lifted his sunglasses. "I think the strangest person in this whole scenario is Dennis Lucero. He purchased a company that was under our control for 6 years without sending us any prior notice. Does he think the Commerce Guild is just for decoration? Everyone in this city knows how powerful we are." "Rumor has it that Dennis Lucero comes from a wealthy family on the East Coast," Mason said. "Even if he is, who cares? Santa Ana is our territory, and we have the final say in all matters in this city. I think we should get rid of this Dennis Lucero," Benjamin suggested. "I agree," Carter said. "I'll have someone send him a notice of payment to gauge his reaction. If he complies, then that means he's willing to follow us. And if he refuses—" Carter cracked his knuckles with a sinister smile. "That's a good idea," Benjamin said. "Then I'll consider the issue with Dennis Lucero settled for now. By the way, have you guys heard about the big shot who came to Santa Ana not too long ago?" Mason glanced over. "I've heard about it. 6 years ago, there was someone who led the 4 great generals to victory during a decisive battle, and this person, who's now the commander-in-chief, came to Santa Ana to inspect our city's military base. They say he's also the Grand Palace Master." Even though the 3 of them were wealthy and influential in Santa Ana, they had only ever heard of the Grand Palace Master. As for what kind of organization the palace was, even with their status, they weren't qualified to know the details. "I heard he's not even 30 yet," Mason added. "My granddaughter's in her late 20s, and her beauty is out of this world. Only someone like the Grand Palace Master is worthy of her. Let me tell you, she's—" Carter interrupted him. "Aren't you getting your hopes up? Just because he's young doesn't mean he's not married." "Does that matter? As long as he wants my granddaughter, I'm willing to give him a second wife." "You're not the only one who has a granddaughter," Benjamin cut in. "I have 3, and their beauty is second to none. He can have all of them if he wishes." Carter and Mason knew that Benjamin wasn't joking. The commander-in-chief held a lofty position, and not just anyone deserved this title. But the Grand Palace Master had countless unprecedented achievements under his belt, including leading the 4 great generals and winning numerous bloody battles. It went without saying that most, if not all, aristocratic families respected the Grand Palace Master. This respect wasn't limited to elite families. Organizations like the Commerce Guild also hoped to forge a connection with the palace, because while they were powerful enough on their own, their influence was limited to Santa Ana. This was an insignificant achievement when compared to the palace's influence that extended across half of the world. Mason threw out a question. Have either of you seen the Commander-in-Chief in person before? It's been a while since he came here. Benjamin and Carter shook their heads regretfully. To be honest, it would be a blessing to meet him in person, Carter said. Benjamin agreed. I heard he only came here for an inspection, so his goal was probably to take a vacation. Some time ago, martial law was enacted at the city's airport. I think the Grand Palace Master was involved. Besides those at the military base, no one has seen him before. What a pity, Mason said. He thought of something and looked at Benjamin. Wasn't your father an important member of the local government? Carter followed up with Mason's line of thinking. You're right. Maybe Benjamin can arrange a meeting with the Grand Palace Master using his father's status. When the time comes, we'll bring our granddaughters along and see who he takes interest in. What the hell are you two thinking? Benjamin asked in disapproval. But what you're suggesting isn't entirely impossible. All right, I've made up my mind. I'll see what I can do. Who'd given Caroline the idea to scheme against Richard. He did it for one reason. To win Caroline's heart. Needless to say, he hadn't succeeded. Whether he knows or not doesn't make a difference. It's already been 6 years, and Richard's death has been ruled a suicide. The authorities won't open the investigation again, and the Commerce Guild has our backs. They won't let him get his way. But he has a cassette tape, Caroline pointed out. It's a recording of me and Frank's discussion about our plan 6 years ago. I don't even know who recorded it. Even if the Commerce Guild can keep the truth under wraps, if he uploads the recording online, everyone will question Richard's death. When that happens, even the Commerce Guild won't be able to save us. Corey fell silent. The Commerce Guild was powerful. There was no doubt about that. But this was the age of the internet, where a single upload could sway public opinion. He had some involvement in their scheme 6 years ago, and he would be in deep trouble if this was exposed. Have you thought about how to resolve this? Corey asked. I'm planning on... Caroline swiped her neck, gesturing that she wanted to kill him. I can't accomplish this on my own, but I know you have connections with people who could lend us their assistance. As long as you're willing to help me and Frank, we can get rid of Stephen and bury the truth for good. It was my idea, but I didn't directly participate in your plan back then, Corey said. Stephen threatened you and Frank, not me. I don't have anything to do with this. Besides, I have no obligation to help you. Hiring assassins is a capital offense. It seemed like Caroline had already expected him to refuse because she didn't bat an eye. Corey, the Commerce Guild is one of the strongest organizations in Santa Ana. Don't you think it's ridiculous for you to talk about the law with me? 10 million in cash, plus me. That should be more than enough of a reward for you. And don't forget, Dennis Lucero is Stephen's supporter, and he's the one who purchased the Klein Group in one night. The Commerce Guild already sees Dennis as a thorn in their side. If you were to resolve their concerns, wouldn't they hold you in higher regard? Caroline's persuasive words filled Corey with anticipation. All right, I'll do it. Dennis turned the corner and stopped at the end of the street. Mr. Adams, we're here. Okay, let's get off. This time, Stephen only brought Dennis with him. He didn't contact Jack or Andrew. Those two considered 20 Rolls-Royce Phantoms the bare minimum to pick him up, and keeping a low profile today was important. He was here to see Richard's mother. When they reached the intersection, a food stall came into view. An elderly woman was frying tofu behind the counter. Perhaps it was because the stall appeared rustic or the woman dressed too plainly, but few customers frequented her stall. Please give us 2 servings of tofu, Stephen said. Coming right up. Richard's mother was in her 70s, but she was lively and full of energy. She smiled brightly when Stephen wanted to buy her tofu. She packaged the meal into 2 containers and put them into a bag, along with 2 forks and napkins. Here you go. Stephen took the bag and glanced at Dennis, who took out 10 $100 bills and stuffed them in Richard's mother's hands. She was surprised to see so much cash.
"You are mistaken. 2 servings of tofu are only $10.
"It's okay, just take it," Stephen said with a smile. "Consider this a small token of our appreciation. I'm Stephen Adams, and 6 years ago, I worked with Richard at Felicity Corporation. Besides being colleagues, he was a good friend of mine. We even came up with the name of the company together." Richard's mother sighed as she remembered the past.
"So you're Richard's colleague. It's a pity that he left this world so early."
An aggressive voice sounded from further down the street. "Old lady, did you forget about our protection fee?" 2 young men marched up to the stall. Their hair was dyed a bright blonde and slicked to the side. "Stop wasting your breath. Hand it over." One of them reached out to snatch the money from Richard's mother, but Stephen grabbed his arm and held him back. "Stealing money in broad daylight? Do the laws mean nothing to you?" The man grimaced as Stephen tightened his grip. "What do you mean, stealing? We're just collecting the protection fees." "Don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong. You'll regret it," the other man warned. Richard's mother tried to stop Stephen.
"You should let him go. These 2 are members of a notorious gang in this neighborhood."
Stephen observed the 2 men. "Are you 2 Sergio and Trent's subordinates?" "They're both dead," one of the men said smugly. "How could we be subordinates of 2 dead people? I don't mind telling you who we are, though. We're members of the Santa Ana gang." After Sergio and Trent's death, a group of hoodlums banded together to form a new gang. If Stephen was being honest, the name of their gang was largely uncreative. "I don't care what group you belong to." Stephen put more strength into his grip, and the man cried out in pain. Just before Stephen fractured his arm, he let go. The man staggered back, fear flickering in his eyes. "In the future, if anyone dares to cause trouble for her, I won't let them go with just a bruise. Get out of here!" The 2 thugs ran away and vanished down the street.
"Stephen, that was the Santa Ana gang. You're in for a lot of trouble because of what you did today,"
Richard's mother said worriedly. "No need to worry. They won't be able to do anything to me. And rest assured, they won't be bothering you in the future. Anyway, I've asked around, and after Richard passed away, you and his father were the only ones left in his family. 1 year ago, his father passed, and you're currently living alone. In the future, you don't need to work so hard and earn a living with this stall. I'll support you, so take it easy." Richard's mother was taken aback.
"Why would you do that for me? We're practically strangers."
"Didn't I tell you before? Richard and I were good friends. Before the incident back then, he entrusted a lot of money to me. He told me that if anything were to happen to him, I'll use the money in his stead and support you. An unexpected situation came up for the past 6 years, so I couldn't meet with you until now. But I told him that I would take care of you like my own mother, and I intend on fulfilling my promise." Stephen gave Dennis a meaningful look. "Right, Dennis?" Dennis nodded along. "Yes."
"I see. Thank you for everything you've done for Richard."
"It's okay. I'm only doing what I should. By the way, where's Richard's grave? I want to pay my respects to him." Tears welled up in Richard's mother's eyes. She was relieved to know that her son had a close and reliable friend like Stephen when he was alive. Stephen and Dennis helped Richard's mother put away the tofu stall, and she led them to the cemetery on the outskirts of the neighborhood. Stephen poured a glass of wine in front of Richard's grave. "Richard, I know your death was unjust. I'm back after 6 years, and I know the truth. Those who framed you are still at large, but I'll make them repent within 3 days. When the time comes, I'll clear your name." He poured the wine over the tombstone. Richard's mother watched him with tears running down her cheeks. Stephen was the first person to pay respects to her son in 6 years. Dennis's phone vibrated with an incoming text. He took out his phone and opened the message. "Mr. Adams, it's Frank and Caroline." It's only been a few hours. Do they have the 1 billion ready? Stephen replied. Yes, they want to meet you tomorrow at noon at the Milky Way Inn, but they want you to come alone, Dennis said. Trigger warning. The following episode contains descriptions of violence which some listeners may find disturbing. It is intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Dennis requested, "It's obviously a trap, Mr. Adams. Let me go with you." "No, I'll go alone," Stephen said. "It's just Frank and Caroline. What could they possibly do to me?" "That's true," Dennis agreed. He'd witnessed Stephen's strength firsthand. 2 ordinary people were no match for him. The next day, Frank and Caroline arrived early in the morning at the Milky Way Inn to make preparations. They had chosen this specific room at the end of the hallway because it had multiple hidden doors. A group of assassins was waiting for them inside. In the past, Corey had spent a lot of money to recruit them. He utilized their services whenever he couldn't deal with certain troublesome people personally. "Arlo, there are many doors to hide behind in this room. Your people will lie in ambush until you hear the sound of a wine glass shattering. That will be your cue," Frank instructed. Arlo, the leader of the assassins, nodded and put a box of guns on the table. He distributed them to the members of his group. "To make sure there's no mistake, why don't we do a test run?" Frank suggested. Arlo glared at him. "Are you questioning our skills?" After a pause, he continued. "Fine, I suppose we could. You hired us for a simple task, but you did pay us 10 million. We'll do as you say." Frank was relieved that he agreed. Arlo instructed his people to hide behind the hidden doors. He gestured to Caroline. "Do you mind if this beautiful lady acts as the person we've been hired to kill?" "That's fine with me," Frank said, giving Caroline a look. Caroline nodded in agreement. The rehearsal began. Caroline walked into the room and tried her best to act like Stephen. Frank pulled her to the table and sat her down. "Mr. Adams, I've prepared the 1 billion. Frank patted a large bag on the table. Then he raised his glass of wine. "After this, we won't have any more ties with each other. Before we go our separate ways, let's have a drink." Just as Caroline was about to pick up her glass, Frank threw his own glass on the floor. The second it shattered, several well-hidden doors opened at the same time, and a group of people clad in black aimed their guns at Caroline. Frank applauded their performance. "Well done. We'll do the same at noon." As the hours ticked by, Frank and Caroline grew nervous. The test run was only practice. Soon, a real assassination would take place. At 12 sharp, Frank received a call from his secretary, informing him that Stephen had arrived. He was alone. Frank and Caroline exchanged a glance and took their seats at the table. Arlo and his group hid behind the doors. 5 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Frank stood up. He was all smiles as he opened the door for Stephen. "Mr. Adams, you've arrived." Stephen leveled him with a scrutinizing gaze. "Looks like you're in a good mood today. If you're this happy about giving me 1 billion, maybe you'll be even more thrilled to give me 2 billion. "Mr. Adams, please spare me. 1 billion was already enough to empty my accounts." "All right, cut the nonsense." Stephen looked around the room. "Where's the money?" Frank met Caroline's gaze. "It's ready." Caroline unzipped a large bag on the table. It was filled to the brim with bills. 1 billion and not a single cent less, she said. Frank spoke according to the script he'd prepared. "Here's 1 billion as promised. After this, there should be no reason for us to see each other again. Before we go our separate ways, I'd like to have a drink with you." "All right. You two did make a significant contribution to my company back then, so I'll accept your invitation." Stephen sat down at the table, and Frank poured a glass of wine for him. They clinked their glasses together as a toast. When Stephen lifted the glass to his lips, Frank loosened his grip on his own glass. As they'd rehearsed earlier, he would drop the glass, and the assassins would jump out and kill Stephen on sight. But the corner of Frank's mouth curved upwards as he released his hold on the glass. But to his astonishment, just as the glass was about to hit the floor, an arm shot out like lightning and caught it before it could shatter to pieces. Stephen put the glass back on the table. "Aren't you two agitated today? You can't even hold on to your glass properly." "Oh, it does make sense. After today, we won't have anything to do with each other, and what you two have done to Richard will be buried forever. Having the chance to turn over a new leaf is something to be excited about." While Stephen wasn't wrong, thinking about his new chance at life was the last thing on Frank's mind. He had to break his glass. Otherwise, Arlo and his group wouldn't make their move. "You're right. I am excited. Mr. Adams, I'm really sorry about what happened just now. Let's have another drink." Frank raised his glass again. "I think you should give Richard a toast with your first glass of wine." Stephen took the glass from his hand and spilled it on the carpet before placing it back on the table. "Don't you have a few words you'd like to say to Richard?" Frank was reaching the end of his patience, but he couldn't expose himself now. He reluctantly put on a somber expression. "Richard, I'm sorry for everything I've done. Today, with this 1 billion, I've settled any grudges between us, and we won't owe each other anything." While Frank was rambling the first words that came to his mind, an idea struck him. He poured himself another glass of wine. "Rest in peace, Richard." Just as Frank was about to throw his glass on the floor, another glass shattered next to him. It was Caroline's. The hidden doors opened at the same time, and 6 men jumped out. They aimed their guns at Stephen and fired. 6 gunshots rang out simultaneously. Frank and Caroline had long since ducked under the table the moment the doors opened. The sound of gunfire faded, and the room lapsed into silence. Frank poked his head out from under the table with a smug look on his face. He wondered how tattered Stephen's corpse would be. To his surprise, Stephen was sitting in the same spot without a single scratch. On the table were 6 guns. All of them had been dismantled. Arlo and his group stared at Stephen with their mouths agape. "What's going on?" Frank asked in confusion. "Can't you see? When we opened fire, he swiped all 6 of our guns and dismantled them," Arlo said matter-of-factly. "Is he even human?" Since their plan had been exposed, there was no point in pretending any further. "I don't care, Arlo. You may not have your guns anymore, but he's not dead yet. Just gang up on him. He has to die today." A faint smile appeared on Stephen's face. "Frank, do you really think you can beat me?" In the next instant, 5 of the assassins reached for their necks, as if sensing something, but it was too late. Their eyes rolled to the back of their heads, and they dropped to the floor. They were dead. Arlo realized that Stephen hadn't just stolen and dismantled their guns. He had also slit their necks without them noticing. Arlo subconsciously reached for his own neck. "There's no need to feel your neck for a wound. I'll let you live," Stephen said indifferently. "Your marksmanship should be top class. Work for me from now on." Frank and Caroline panicked when Arlo agreed and switched sides in a heartbeat. "Mr. Adams, listen to me," Frank pleaded. "This was all a misunderstanding. I really didn't want to kill you. The 1 billion is all yours. Let's go our separate ways peacefully." "You're quite eloquent with your words," Stephen said as he glanced at the bag. "Do you think I'm an idiot? How could 1 billion in cash fit in there?" Stephen tossed a dagger onto the floor. "I'm not one to let things slide, especially when it concerns the people around me. I'll count to 3. I'll spare whoever gets the dagger first and kills the other person." It was at this moment that Frank and Caroline realized that they'd made a mistake. They never should have gone against Stephen. Even Arlo was on his side. They knew that Stephen was being serious. He was someone who always kept his word. Stephen began counting. 1, 2. Before he could even count to 3, Caroline dived for the dagger and plunged it into Frank's neck without hesitation. Disbelief crossed Frank's face as he collapsed to the floor. Caroline gasped for breath as she watched Frank bleed out.
Blood had splattered over her arms, face, and clothes. Caroline seemed shocked at what she'd done, but it only took her a few seconds to come to terms with the fact that she'd just killed someone with her own hands. She turned to Stephen with a strange calm in her demeanor. "Mr. Adams, I did it." Stephen was genuinely surprised by her ruthlessness. "So you have. To be honest, I didn't expect that from you. But Caroline, you violated the rules. You didn't wait until I counted to 3. "What? You can't do this to me, Stephen." Caroline's voice shook, but then her tone turned sinister. "I'm Corey's woman now. You wouldn't dare lay a hand on me." "Corey? Never heard of him." "He's Carter's son. In case you didn't know who that is either, he's the second in command of the Commerce Guild." Stephen pretended to be surprised. "So he has a powerful background?" Thinking that he was scared, Caroline continued to boast. "If something happens to me, he won't let you go." "Then, do you know who I am?" Stephen waved for Arlo to come closer and whispered his identity. Arlo was stunned. He straightened and composed himself before walking around the table and picking up the dagger that Caroline had dropped. Compared to Mr. Adams' identity, not even Corey or his father, Carter, is worth mentioning. Caroline took a step back as Arlo picked up the dagger. The walls were soundproof, and her scream fell on deaf ears. At midnight, Corey was enjoying himself with 2 women at the hotel. The doorbell rang. "Who is it?" he called out impatiently. A man's voice sounded from outside the room. "I've brought a gift for you." Corey detached himself from the 2 women and went to open the door. He peered outside, but no one was there. There was, however, a small box on the floor next to the doorway. Corey grabbed the box and went back inside. Was this some kind of prank? When he lifted the lid, he almost dropped the box in horror. A bloody finger was inside the box, and a familiar diamond ring sparkled under the fluorescent lighting. The same ring was on his own finger. He and Caroline had bought a pair of matching rings together yesterday. Corey took out his phone and called Arlo in a panic. His phone was turned off. He gave Caroline a call. Her phone was turned off too. Corey felt like death was staring at him from the shadows. After calming down, he noticed a slip of paper peeking out from underneath the finger. He carefully pinched the edge and tugged it out. The following was written. 6 years ago, when Felicity Corporation went under, Richard was framed for a crime he never committed. Whoever drove him to his death, I hope to see you in front of his grave tomorrow at noon. Otherwise, this box tomorrow night will contain your head. Corey crumpled the paper in his hand. No one had ever threatened him like this before. He wouldn't let them get away with it. He threw the ball of paper on the floor and immediately made a call. The next morning, after Stephen sent Kim to work, he took a cab to the Wyvern Group. When he entered the office, Dennis handed him a letter. "Mr. Adams, we received this in the morning." Stephen skimmed the contents before tossing it to the side. "Commerce Guild? Fees?" "Yes, they're asking for $10 million a year," Dennis said. "Speaking of which, has our Wyvern Group joined the Commerce Guild?" "No, but I believe the Klein Group was affiliated with them." "That makes things simple. The Klein Group is the Klein Group, and the Wyvern Group is the Wyvern Group. There's no relationship between them, so there's no reason why the Commerce Guild should ask us for fees. We'll tell them that the Wyvern Group won't be paying them a single cent." After asking Annika to give the Commerce Guild a reply, Stephen and Dennis went to Richard's grave. Caroline had learned her lesson, and she'd been waiting for them for several hours. Yesterday, she decided to lose a finger rather than lose her life, but either outcome was devastating. Stephen walked up to her. "Caroline, have you repented? Do you feel guilty now that you're standing here in front of Richard's grave? Losing a finger doesn't come close to making up for what you've done. I could have killed you and avenged him, but you were the woman he loved, so I chose to let you live. But remember, that doesn't change the fact that you caused his death. Leave. I don't think Richard would want to see you again." With Stephen's permission, Caroline paid her respects before hurrying away. She was afraid that Stephen would change his mind. "It's already 11:55. Is Corey not here yet?" Stephen asked. "I don't think he's coming. He's never seen you in action, you know," Dennis said. "That's true. Seems like I'll have to show him what I'm capable of," Stephen replied. "Yes, but tomorrow we're officially changing the company's name to Wyvern Group. Don't you think it'll be bad luck if we shed blood on a day like that?" Dennis requested. "Now that you mention it, you're right. Okay, we'll let Corey be for 2 more days. We'll settle the score with him after tomorrow," Stephen said. The 3 leaders of the Commerce Guild were gathered in the conference room. Benjamin slammed his fists on the table. "This is preposterous. Dennis is clearly looking down on us."
Exactly.
Carter pointed at the letter from the Wyvern Group. "Look at what they sent. They declared that they would never pay fees to a subpar merchant guild. They're obviously not taking us seriously."
"Benjamin, we can't let this drag on," Mason said. "We need to make them understand who we are and why we're at the head of Santa Ana. I heard the Wyvern Group's holding an event tomorrow to make their name official, and they'll be changing the sign to Wyvern Group."
"Do you have any ideas?" Benjamin asked.
"Since they've clearly established their stance, we can't let them off. What if an accident happens tomorrow during the event? For example, their CEO getting shot and killed. There will be chaos, and people will be getting trampled on. The public won't sit still if there are casualties. This will be our gift to the Wyvern Group." Carter gave Mason a big thumbs up.
That's clever.
"That's not a bad idea," Benjamin said. "Have you made arrangements already?"
"Yes, I've also spread the word among the public that the Wyvern Group will be holding an event, and everyone is invited to join in on the fun. They may not be able to see Mr. Lucero up close because they don't have an invitation, but they could still watch from the sidelines. The more the merrier, and the bigger the disaster." At the Wyvern Group, Stephen was fiddling with a sniper rifle in the CEO's office. "What do you think? It's been modified by experts from the palace. It makes no sound upon being fired. No one will know where the shot came from."
"Not bad," Dennis said. "If we had this rifle in the military, our strength would greatly increase."
"That'll happen eventually. Next up, let's talk about tomorrow's event," Stephen replied.
Dennis pointed to the buildings across from their company. "We'll have 1 sniper at each building equipped with this rifle. They'll be on standby and take action as soon as they spot anyone who wants to mess up the event. In addition, I contacted the military and asked them to send a team to wait in an ambush at the end of the street. If anything unexpected happens, they'll let me know right away."
"Sounds good," Stephen said. "The Commerce Guild has been running loose for too long. It's time to uproot them all."
Ever since Felicity Corporation was established 6 years ago, the Commerce Guild had been indulging in illegal activities and abusing their authority. The existence of their organization restricted the economic growth of Santa Ana. Stephen wouldn't let them do as they pleased in this city any longer. When Stephen arrived at Haynes Industries, everyone from the family was already there, including Gordon and Mavis. Judging from the serious atmosphere, they were discussing important matters. No one paid Stephen any mind when he took a seat. They continued their conversation as if he weren't there. Kim was the only one who acknowledged his presence. Gordon was sitting at the head of the table, leading the discussion.
"I believe you've all heard of the mysterious CEO, Dennis Lucero. Tomorrow he'll be holding an official event to rename their company to Wyvern Group. They say he's invited several enterprises."
Don't underestimate the Wyvern Group, Mavis added. Mr. Lucero acquired the company in one night without the Commerce Guild knowing. He can't be underestimated. There are rumors that he has the support of the military. I'm afraid something big is about to happen.
Naturally, everyone had heard that the Klein Group had been purchased overnight, but what they didn't know was that the Commerce Guild wasn't aware of the acquisition. Before Dennis purchased the company, the members of the Haynes family didn't have the status nor the necessary qualifications to meet with the previous CEO, Lucas Klein. It went without saying that other than the fact that the Commerce Guild was a powerful organization in Santa Ana, they knew nothing about their internal workings. If Dennis had managed to purchase a company without obtaining prior approval from the Commerce Guild, that would mean that he was above them in strength. If the Haynes family could achieve a business partnership with the Wyvern Group, Dennis would be their backer by extension. They would no longer have to deal with pressure from the Commerce Guild.
If we attend the Wyvern Group's event tomorrow, it would be a huge boost to our Haynes family's reputation, Gordon said. If the Commerce Guild demands of us in the future, they would need to consider Dennis. But unfortunately, we haven't received an invitation. The event is tomorrow, so they're probably not planning on inviting us.
Cohen sighed. If only we could get a list of those they invited. Then we wouldn't have to blindly guess. At the very least, if we know for certain that we weren't invited, we could try to come up with a way to get an invitation. But as things stand, there's nothing we can do.
I have that list that you want, Stephen said.
Stop bluffing. If you don't have anything useful to say, then leave. Cohen had been holding a grudge against Stephen ever since Linda was forced to give up her position at Haynes Industries. Kelly's husband chimed in. You're just a stay-at-home husband. Why would you have that?
Stephen, do you really have the list?
Kim asked in a low voice. Stephen opened a file on his phone and gave it to Kim. Yeah, here it is. Kim's eyes lit up. She passed the phone to Gordon, who put on his reading glasses. With a serious expression, he took the phone and looked over the list.
Are we on the list?
Mavis asked. Gordon put down the phone and shook his head. Everyone was disappointed to hear that. Gordon turned to Cohen.
You work in the local government, and you have connections all over the city. Would it be possible for you to ask the Wyvern Group to give us an invitation?
With Cohen's position in the city, the Wyvern Group would have to at least accept his request for a meeting. I could try, but... Cohen looked at Gordon expectantly. As you know, a company as big as the Wyvern Group wouldn't hand out invitations to just anyone, so...
If you need financial support, you can come to talk to me at any time. Even if we have to give them hundreds of thousands or even $1 million, we'll do it.
Cohen had a triumphant smile on his face. Thank you.
Why would you need to hand over $1 million for a mere invitation?
Stephen asked in disdain.
Grandpa, as the husband of Haynes Industries vice president, I can take care of this for you.
Cohen scoffed. Do you really think that you're capable of that just because you were able to get a list of the invitees? Mr. Lucero is the one who decides who will get an invitation. Do you think you have the ability to change his mind? Don't overestimate yourself.
Of course I can change his mind, Stephen said confidently. It's just a matter of a few words.
It's been a while since you came to Santa Ana, but your habit of bragging hasn't gotten any better, Kelly's husband said.
I'm not bragging. Why don't we make a bet? Tomorrow morning, the Haynes family will receive an invitation from the Wyvern Group. If not, then Kim will resign from her position as vice president.
The members of the Haynes family had been concerned about Kim's position, and hearing Stephen himself propose a bet gave them an opportunity they'd been looking for. Kelly shrugged. You said it, not me.
Yes, I did, but I'm not finished. If you do receive an invitation, then Kim will have full authority over Haynes Industries' staff.
Even though Kim was the vice president, everyone in the Haynes family held important positions, and they abused their status to make things difficult for her. As a result, it was hard for Kim to move forward with her work. Gordon accepted Stephen's bet.
The time limit will be tomorrow morning at 7:30.
When Stephen and Kim returned to Riverview Villa, Natalie was shocked that Stephen had made a bet with Kim's position on the line.
You must be out of your mind.
Forget it, Mom. Let's leave it up to fate, Kim said nonchalantly. She'd only come to Santa Ana for Mavis's birthday, but they'd ended up staying much longer than planned, and she'd even become the vice president on a whim. Kim didn't feel much attachment to her position, so she was indifferent to either outcome of the bet. The next morning, the Haynes family sent someone to Riverview Villa to urge them to hurry to the company. They would be announcing the results of yesterday's bet. Kim looked at her watch. It was only 6:30 a.m. The Haynes family was probably rushing them because Stephen had lost the bet. It did make sense, though. While the Haynes family was wealthy, it was nowhere near Dennis's level. Since Kim would be resigning from her vice president position, she decided to dress up more than usual. She would leave with a bang. Stephen was entranced when she left the room. "Kim, you look beautiful today." Kim's face reddened. "Am I not usually beautiful?" "You're pretty every day, but you're especially pretty today. Did you dress up because you think we're gonna win?" Kim gave him an incredulous look. In what way did her flashy outfit scream winner? It was more like an extravagant way to salvage her dignity after losing the bet. Stephen drove Kim to Haynes Industries in Dennis's car. Everyone from the Haynes family had been waiting here since early in the morning. "You're finally here," Cohen called out when they entered the conference room. He turned to Gordon. "Since everyone's here, let's announce the result." Gordon nodded. "I will now announce that Kim has officially resigned from her position as Haynes Industries vice president." "Wait," Stephen interrupted. He pointed to the clock on the wall. "There's still 10 minutes until 7:30. You made a decision early. That's not under the rules." Cohen sneered. "Do you think the Wyvern Group is going to add our company's name to their list of invitees in 10 minutes? That's just wishful thinking." "They're probably busy making the final preparations for their event," Kelly's husband added. "Stephen, you've already lost." The rest of the Haynes family joined in. "Even if we were to wait until after 7:30, the result would still be the same. If you don't have the courage to admit that you've lost, just be honest. We're all family here. We don't look down on you." Kim had long since mentally prepared herself. "Stephen, let's just admit defeat." "No, I don't lose." Stephen glanced at the clock. Time was ticking, but there was no sign of Dennis. He stepped out of the room to give him a call. "Where the hell are you?" "Sorry, there was traffic. I just arrived. I'm pulling up in front of the company as we speak," Dennis replied. At this time, the screeching of a car's tires grating on the pavement sounded from outside the company. Sparks flew as a Land Rover came to a stop. With all eyes on him, Dennis strolled into the building and headed up to the conference room. 30 seconds before 7:30, he entered the room and walked straight to Gordon and Mavis to greet them. Gordon and Mavis exchanged a questioning look. "Who might you be?" "Hello, I'm Dennis Lucero, the CEO of the Wyvern Group." Dennis took out an invitation and handed it to Gordon. "I came here to deliver an invitation to my company's event. We'll be officially changing the name today, and we'd be delighted to have you there." Everyone looked on in disbelief as Gordon opened the invitation. Sure enough, his and Mavis's names were written on it. At the bottom corner was the official seal of the Wyvern Group. "I have to go back and prepare for the event, so I won't disturb you anymore," Dennis said. "Our event will start at 10. Please attend if you have the time." "Of course, Mr. Lucero. We'll be there." Gordon and Mavis were thrilled. The CEO of the Wyvern Group, Dennis Lucero, had come to personally deliver the invitation. This alone was enough for the Haynes family's reputation to soar. Compared to everyone else who'd been invited, Dennis had personally taken the time out of his schedule to deliver an invitation to Haynes Industries. "The winner has been decided," Stephen said after Dennis left. "It's time for you to fulfill your promise." Gordon nodded. "I'd like to officially announce that Kim Cassidy, the vice president of Haynes Industries, will be appointed the director of the Human Resources Department." Kelly voiced her objections. We may have received the invitation, but I don't believe it was because of Stephen and Kim. Everyone, think carefully. Why would Mr. Lucero personally deliver the invitation? This was the question that everyone had been wondering about. The Haynes family paled in comparison to Dennis's status and, well, why would he pay so much attention to them? While everyone was trying to rationalize Dennis's actions, Kelly continued to speak. The reason is simple. It's thanks to Linda's husband, Cohen. Remember what he said yesterday. He works in the government, so it's not surprising that he contacted Mr. Lucero using his connections. Mr. Lucero probably heard about Cohen's government position and wanted to befriend him. That's why he came here with the invitation. The members of the Haynes family looked as if they'd suddenly been enlightened. That makes sense. Well done, Cohen, Gordon said. The rest of the family nodded in agreement. Cohen was confused, but he reacted quickly and played along. You're too kind. You hit it really well, Megan's husband said. This is a commendable achievement, but you were planning on hiding it from us and helping the company in the dark. You're a true role model. Megan's husband glanced at Stephen and Kim. Unlike some people who couldn't achieve anything but still want to take credit for it. Fortunately, Kelly figured it out in time. Otherwise, none of us would have known what Cohen did for the company. Stephen was dumbfounded by how the situation had unfolded. He was the reason why Dennis had come to the company in the first place, but Kelly had somehow convinced everyone in the room with her illogical speculations. And Cohen had shamelessly taken credit for something he hadn't done. Stephen couldn't reveal his identity, but he also couldn't lose the bet. Kim's position was at stake. I have a few words I'd like to say. When I made a bet, I never said that Uncle Cohen had to be the reason behind the invitation. As long as the Haynes industry receives an invitation, it would be my win. Everyone was present and heard exactly what I said yesterday. Therefore, you should admit defeat unless you want to embarrass yourselves. Everyone turned their attention to Stephen. He was right. His exact words were, tomorrow morning, the Haynes family will receive an invitation from the Wyvern Group. If not, then Kim will resign from her position as vice president. They hadn't clarified the details of the bet yesterday. Gordon was embarrassed when he realized his error. From the way things stood, he couldn't say that Stephen had lost the bet. You're right, Gordon conceded. You've won the bet. As I've stated earlier, Kim will be the director of the Human Resources Department. To the Haynes family, Gordon's words were essentially a verdict. No one could refute him. As for Kim, she'd been prepared to lose her position, which wouldn't have mattered either way. But not only had she kept her vice president position, but she had also been given another position. Being the director of the Human Resources Department meant that she had full authority over the company's staff. After the meeting, Gordon and Mavis made preparations to attend the Wyvern Group's event. At the Commerce Guild, Benjamin, Carter, and Mason were gathered in the conference room. The arrangements are complete, Mason said. When Mr. Lucero reveals himself, the assassins I've hired will kill him instantly. The guests will panic, and the venue will turn chaotic. That's when the members of Santa Ana gang will mingle with the guests and cause even more trouble. Are you sure you've planned for everything? Benjamin asked. Absolutely, Mason replied. I spent a huge sum of money to hire the assassins. Their marksmanship is top tier. They never miss. Also, they can easily blend in with the crowd and snipe Mr. Lucero when he makes his appearance. No one would expect an assassin from right under their noses. This is the perfect gift for Mr. Lucero. 15 minutes before 10 o'clock, the entrance to the Wyvern Group was bustling with guests. A plaza was located in front of the building, and it had been decorated with lights and banners. These guests were among the wealthiest in the city. They had all come early because they couldn't wait to see Dennis in person. At this time, the man of the hour, Dennis, was with Stephen in the CEO's office on the 30th floor. We've located the position of 5 assassins. They've blended in with the crowd, but there's at least 1 assassin situated in the east, west, north, and south preparing to kill you, Stephen said. Dennis scoffed. They want to assassinate me? I'd like to see them try. Look forward to my performance, Mr. Adams.
All right, I'll be meeting with the 3 leaders from the Commerce Guild after the event's over.
When Stephen and Dennis left the office, they split up and headed in different directions. 10 minutes later, Dennis arrived at the plaza in front of the company, while Stephen stepped into an alleyway. The entire plaza was in an uproar when Dennis showed up. They cheered for him and shouted his name. Dennis went on stage and greeted the audience. As he waved, he scanned the crowd and pinpointed the locations of the 5 assassins. When Dennis's gaze fell on one particular assassin standing behind Gordon and Mavis, they thought he was looking at them. Gordon and Mavis exchanged an excited glance.
Did you see that? Mr. Lucero looked in our direction.
The event took off without a hitch, and soon it was nearing its end. Benjamin, Carter, and Mason were watching the event aired live on TV. The scene that they imagined of Dennis being assassinated did not happen. The company's upper management staff stood next to Dennis as he replaced the sign with a new sign containing their new name, Wyvern Group. There were many opportunities to kill him, but from the beginning until the end, the assassins didn't make a single move. Mason was bewildered. That's impossible. The 5 assassins I hired have never failed to kill their targets. Benjamin's phone rang. His expression darkened as he received an update on their plan. What's wrong? Mason asked. Before the Santa Ana gang could mingle with the crowd, they were caught by the Special Forces. Why would the Special Forces be around? Maybe Mr. Lucero caught wind of our plan and set up the scene ahead of time. There's an 80 to 90% chance that our assassins are dead, but who could have leaked our plan? Mason glanced at Carter suspiciously.
Hey, why are you looking at me like that? Do you really think I would spill the beans?
Mason, don't make wild guesses, Benjamin said. The 3 of us lead the Commerce Guild. None of us would benefit from leaking the plan. We need to think about this carefully. There's no need to think further. The door to the office swung open, and Stephen walked in with a smile plastered on his face. Long time no see. Benjamin grasped the situation the moment he saw him. Were you the one behind this, Stephen? That's right. Stephen opened his hand, revealing 5 bullets in his palm. He put them on the table. These bullets are from your assassin's guns. Benjamin, Carter, and Mason were stunned as they examined the bullets. What's your connection with Mr. Lucero? Benjamin asked. Stephen walked to the front of the room and took a seat behind the CEO's desk. I'm his boss. As for my identity, I don't mind telling you. I'm sure you've heard all about the palace. It could be considered my private property. Are you implying that you're the Grand Palace Master? Benjamin laughed. Don't be ridiculous. If you were really the Grand Palace Master, you wouldn't have disappeared 6 years ago and let your Felicity Corporation merge with the Klein Group. Even if you are Mr. Lucero's boss, you would still have to rely on the Commerce Guild to be successful in this city. Do you think lying about your identity will scare us? Mason added. Right. We're not afraid of you, Carter said. Benjamin's phone rang again. This time, he was excited after taking the call. Good news. Andrew Hendricks from the palace is paying a visit to the Commerce Guild. That's great. He can expose Stephen's lies for us. With Mr. Hendricks' support, we can deal with Mr. Lucero easily. Stephen paid them no mind and looked out the window. A Rolls-Royce Phantom was downstairs, and trailing behind was a line of Mercedes-Benz S-Classes and Land Rovers.